Right, let's now look at one of the most real problems you'll hit when working with TypeScript. That is what happens when you want to use a JavaScript library that has no TypeScript types. So remember, TypeScript doesn't automatically know JavaScript libraries. If a library is written in TypeScript, awesome, no problem. But if not, TypeScript looks at it and says, a cool library, but I have no idea what functions or types are inside that thing, so I can't use it. That's where type definition files step in. Type definition files are files with .d.ts extension. They are like cheat sheets that tell TypeScript, here's what's inside that JavaScript library and what are the types of functions, variables, and classes being used in it. And normally we would just install types from definitely typed by using npm install @type/library name. But what happens if that type doesn't exist and we get a 404 error? So let me show you a real world example. Let's take example of a tiny library called isOdd that just checks if a number is odd. That's simple. Here's the npm page for this library, just one function in it is odd. Very convenient for demo purposes, right? So as step one, let's go ahead and install it. So let's go to Visual Studio Code. Npm install is odd. Right, it's installed. So let's first get familiar with the type of issue that you are going to see. So to do that, let's create a new file and try to use this library. So I'm going to call it import.jslib.ts. I'll go to their npm page, copy the usage example and paste. Now I'm getting a red squiggly under require, and it says require call may be converted to an import. So the issue is that TypeScript is suggesting converting the require call to an import statement, as require is typically used in CommonJS modules, which is odd library being an old JavaScript library is, while ES modules or ECMAScript modules, which are a new standard of JavaScript, use import for better type checking and module resolution. TypeScript would always push you to use the import syntax. You can get around this problem by enabling ES module interop and allow synthetic default import settings in tsconfig, but I don't want to get into that detail, so I'll simply accept that suggestion and change this const to import, and that error goes away, or rather shifts to the right. So what's happening now? Now we get the real problem. Cannot find a declaration file for module isOrg. Now TypeScript is complaining it doesn't have type information for that library. It is suggesting to first being to check if a type from definitely typed is available under @typescope, which should be step one, but we'll skip that since it doesn't align well with our demo, right? The second suggestion is to create a type declaration file with .d.ts extension containing declare module isOrg. That's what we are going to do. But you should always try the step one first. Before jumping to the type declaration step, we first need to inspect the code we are creating type definition for. Otherwise, there's no point. So to do that, let's go to node modules, isOrg, and in package.json, let's find a main section, which is here, which points us to the entry point of that library, which is index.js. Let's open this and inspect this. All right, so here's the isOrg function, and let's try to infer as much information as we can. So we can straight away see a couple of things. First of all, it is using module.export to export a function, which is the isOrg one. The second is that the isOrg function is taking a single value, which is being used in maths.abs. Now, maths.abs in JavaScript can work with both numbers and numbers as strings, right? So numbers in double quotes, they are valid inputs to maths.abs. So this value is definitely a number, but from the npm page and the usage examples provided there, we can clearly see it's taking strings as well. So the value is of type string or number. That's the second information that we know. Now let's focus to the return type. This expression is gonna evaluate to a true or false. So we can safely assume that it returns a Boolean. Note that steps we just performed were necessary and would always be required to infer the type from given code. I'm trying to walk you through the process you would need to follow, and it would always be more complex than that tiny example in most cases. Now, we need to decide where to create the declaration file. Easiest option is to create it in the source folder. A better option is to create a dedicated folder for types. So let's do that. So in global scope, let's create a folder called types. And in here, I'm going to create a file. And the convention is to use library name d.ts. So I'm going to say is d.ts. You can also have a global.d.ts file, which would be a single file for all libraries for which you want to declare types, but this is a better way. All right, in here, we need to create declare module is odd, just as it's suggested in the error message. Next, I need to add a line export equal to is odd. In TypeScript, the export equal to syntax in .d.ts file is used to define modules that export a single entity using module.exports in CommonJS libraries, ensuring that module's export structure is correctly understood by TypeScript. This declaration enables proper type checking and allows for correct importing in TypeScript code. This line is essential if module.export is being used, which is the case here. Okay, our type definition file is ready. Next, TypeScript needs to take this folder into consideration during compilation. So we need to inform TypeScript about it, otherwise it would be ignored. Now, again, two ways to do it. The easier one being to go to tsconfig.json and add the types folder beside this source folder in include property. The other way is to use the type roots setting, which is the appropriate location. So let's use that. Let's see if it exists. Here it is, commented out. So uncomment that and let me fill it in and explain the rest. Here we go. Note you need to specify both your path and the node module slash @ types here as well. This is super important point if using type roots. If you don't use this setting in tsconfig, TypeScript automatically checks @ types folder under node modules by default if that property does not exist in tsconfig, which was the case a second ago. But if you use it, only its contents are checked for types. Only. So you can easily shoot yourself in the foot by forgetting to include node modules, and TypeScript would stop looking for types from the definitely types project. So use it carefully. All right, we can see redness of our file is gone. So I can go file, save all, to save all our changes. No errors here, which is good. So let's try it out. And we are getting true, which is the result for is odd 1. So let's confirm if that was indeed the case. And for 2, we get false. So everything is working. TypeScript is happy. We are happy. The world is a better place. But is it? Now that you understand how to get TypeScript working with JavaScript libraries, allow me to bring something nasty to your attention. So by now we have created a bunch of TypeScript files that get compiled to the dist folder as JavaScript files. But if we were creating a library to publish to NPM, can they be consumed by another TypeScript developer like yourself? And sadly, the answer is no, not in this state. You see, they are only JavaScript files. But you thought this entire curse of type definitions was brought about by those pesky JavaScript developers, and TypeScript developers were the good guys descending from heaven to fight evil. How can we contribute to evil the same way as they do? Well, that's where the free will comes into play. You see, the target audience of a TypeScript project is generally Node.js or browser, which are only concerned with JavaScript. So in most cases, creating those type definition files is a waste of resources, including computation and storage. So the option is disabled by default for good reason. The solution, however, is simple. You just need to turn an option called declaration in tsconfig to true. Here it is, which generates .d.ts files from TypeScript and JavaScript files in your project. Super easy, right? By default, these files would go to the same folder as JavaScript, but you can separate them out using declaration dir property in tsconfig. I hope by now you are fully familiar and functional with type definitions and can play around with these with confidence.